The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I am still not Ryan Kairalla, but it is a pleasure to have you here. I'm Zach Sloan, covering for the globetrotting Ryan Kairalla. And don't worry, he's going to be back next week. This is my last week at the helm here. But I have a treat for you. I have two treats for you. I have multiple treats. We have, how you say, a box of chocolates worth of treats today. We have our guest today, Danny Garcia, the CEO of Song Tools. Song Tools is reshaping how independent artists make their music and make their music get from New York to places like Bogota. But because it's my last week at the helm and I wanted some shenanigans, we are also going to have a second guest / co-host in the first segment. We're going to talk about some comedy, emceeing, some pop culture. So let's bring her on now. Welcome to the show, the comedian, the podcaster, the MC, the amazing Debbie Shear. Debbie, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Zach. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I am awesome, and I am so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
On this show. So if for those of you, maybe this is your first listen of the show, you don't know what we're about. We are about empowering independent creators, and that starts off with musicians. As the typical the main host, Ryan Kairalla, is a entertainment law attorney, but we've had video game producers on. They make independent art. We've had theater people. We've had movie directors. We've had writers. We have had a shameful lack of comedians. And Debbie, I can't think of an independent creator who is probably more has a more difficult path than that of a comedian. So, in Ryan's absence, I have brought a comedian on so that we can talk about comedy and how those skills actually help you in other parts of your life. So, Debbie, but you're more than a comedian. You also have a fantastic podcast, the Aging with Pride podcast. Can we plug that on the front so I don't forget?
Yes.
Tell us about the Aging with Pride podcast.
So Aging with Pride podcast, where we celebrate the joys and WTFs of aging queerly, is a podcast that I co-host with my wife.
Yeah.
I know.
Woo!
I know that was the last week change. And yeah, we talk about what it's like to be aging in the queer community. So we have guests on to talk about everything from finances over 50 and, all sorts of things, love after grief and all topics. We actually have a section called the Gayborhood, and we talk to individuals who we would love to have as our neighbors. And in fact, Susan was one of our from Ryan Chris, right? Am I getting that right? That
Got it.
Yes. She was one of our guests. So that was really fun.
Yes, it's a fantastic podcast. I would say the Susan episode's actually been my favorite thus far, but as a musician, you can understand.
Yeah.
And her story was amazing, right? Like you got.
She's got a fascinating story. Yes, for sure. So it's just a fun project that we get to do together and be creative together, because we both have creative outlets, but not as a couple. So it's been really fun.
It is really cool. And, full transparency, Debbie's now wife is also the guitar player who founded Dear Marsha, the band I am in. And so I've got to know Debbie for a while. And one thing that I knew I was going to like you when I first met you, Debbie, because you were so cuttingly funny, not cutting in a cruel way, just like you got to the heart of something that was humorous very quickly. Is that a skill you've always had?
I think it's a skill I've had, but I've had to mature into it, to not do what you said, which was to be kind of hurtful with it. And that part came with maturity and aging.
So let's talk about that, because whenever I hear the stories of comedians,
Mhm.
it's always, I started at 20 as an open micer and I did that. And then eventually blah, 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 blah. And then I got to open some shows. That was not your path.
Not my
Can you
path.
tell us about your path in
Yes.
comedy?
I started doing I'm 57 and I started doing comedy in 2013. So that is, somebody do the math. You're the
12
math.
years ago?
Yeah, 12 years ago. So I was older than many comics. I decided to try stand-up comedy because I was going through a very scary divorce. And I thought, well, I'm going to try and I'll do something to take my mind off of this situation that I'm in. It's not I wouldn't recommend that tactic, but it worked. So I did my first stand-up set. I was given a few minutes at a place off of East Colfax, and I survived. I wasn't sure if I would, right, going from the green room upstairs onto the stage, but I did survive, and it was a very empowering experience, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with connecting with audiences through humor. That's what I fell in love with. Now, I do want to speak to the open mic because you mentioned that and you and I have been talking about it. I did go to open mics. I learned very early on. First of all, I had two young boys at home. I had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. I was now a single mom. And everybody who knows me knows, I'll fall asleep at a concert at 7 p.m. I am very sorry. And I like to be at home and in bed, right? Like I'm not a late night person. And I was drinking then, but I did get sober, which made going to bars even less desirable.
Mhm.
So I learned pretty quickly that the bar scene wasn't going to be for me. And I also learned quickly that I was funny, but I was not make a great living funny, which are
Ah.
two different levels of funny.
So tell me about that, because that's something that I feel like indie creators, musicians, myself included, that's almost like this taboo subject that people don't want to talk about, but it's very real. Can you explain what you mean there?
Yeah, to make it in well, and even music, right? It takes so much, and there's luck. Let's not joke ourselves. There's
For
luck.
sure.
There's knowing certain people, being at the right place in the right moment. Like that's just a part of life. But I was getting laughs. I was having good sets. But for me to elevate and go to the next level where I could make a living at it, it was not realistic for me at that time. It just wasn't going to be in my hemisphere.
Mhm.
It wasn't.
Well, and I've noticed that with musicians too, right? Like I know some musicians. I used to actually run a music open mic, and I loved it. And it was fun. There were some issues with it, but like one thing I remember talking about with a gentleman who seems like he came to the music open mics similar to the way you were going to comedies. He's like, even if I was good enough, Zach, he's like, I ain't going to tour. I'm not going to do it. I have kids. I'm just not.
Yeah.
And so he enjoyed it for that.
Yeah.
And he made records at home, but he kept his day job. He did other things and didn't head out on the road, which sounds like might have been part of your calculus.
Well, and so it's also, and I know this is the same for musicians, right? You go to an open mic, there's maybe 40 people who have signed up. You've got the host, and if the host knows people and is friends with people, well, they're going to get moved to the front. And so you could wait hours and maybe never go on, or wait hours and go on for a few minutes. And that's all fair and fine. It's part of the culture there. But yeah, it's just, and I didn't want to travel. I didn't want to get paid in bar tabs. That's a real thing,
Right.
especially when
That's
you're
true.
starting out. Like that's not helping me feed my kids or pay my bills. And when I got sober, it surely wasn't helping me. So, to continue to elevate to the next level and the next level, it was, and I have friends who have done very well, and I'm so impressed by them because the amount of energy, work, passion that goes into it and sacrifice is impressive.
I have said, like, sometimes I hear, like, in my little bubble of musicians, they're like, nobody has it harder than musicians. And I'm like, that is so untrue. I think musicians have it rough, but there are two independent creator industries that I cannot fathom going into for how difficult it is. One is filmmaking, because the expense, the time, and the talent that takes is astronomical. And two is comedy, and not just stand-up. I mean, I'm talking, do you want to be like a player on the improv scene? That's a whole separate ball of wax.
Yeah.
Do you want to be a comedy writer? I don't even know where you would begin for something like that.
Yeah.
So comedy is like this whole sphere that I feel like a lot of us don't know much about, but a lot of people want to know more about.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
if you had some ideas to help somebody who maybe
Yeah.
wanted to break into comedy professionally or just for their own enjoyment, what do you got for our listeners?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say, being a comedian, there's a lot less equipment to haul. Now I've learned that after my, with Wendy and following Dear Marsha, I'm like, wow, you people have to show up really early and it takes you a long time to break down and I'm already asleep. But for me, I'll tell you what I learned. And I think it's advice that other people, it may serve them. I started doing stand-up comedy. I also realized quickly, because I was in my 40s, that I didn't see a lot of comedy that I felt connected to. And so the one thing I've learned, and a lot of musicians have learned this too, you create what you want to see. And so I ventured from doing straight stand-up to creating comedy education shows because that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to talk to the queer community. I wanted to talk to people who are, aging. And I said, I'm going to do it. Right. That's the only way we can do it is we just say, we're going to try it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, we'll shift.
Well, and I think that's interesting, right? Because so often what we talk to musicians about is cutting through the clutter.
Yeah.
Right. You might do a really great Tom Petty impression, but I got bad news for you. Tom Petty already put out records. You need to do something that's authentic to you.
100%.
And it sounds like you kind of
100%.
found that voice.
I did. And I'm glad that you brought up that word because it is such an important one. When you're first starting anything, you're pulling in all these pieces, right? You're trying to put on all these outfits to see what fits. And then hopefully as you mature a little bit, you realize, that didn't work for me because that was not me. That was not my authentic voice. So when you start to develop that voice, and that's what I did through creating education and comedy shows, it was like, this feels like home. This feels right for me.
And if some of our listeners want to check out some of these shows, how do we find them?
Yeah, well, sadly, I don't do them anymore because
No, Debbie.
I mean, there are videos of them. I ran a show called Sex Calm the Show. We had a sexologist on, and people would ask, write anonymous questions that we would answer. I'd provide the comedic relief. I did a show called Broadsided Comedy, estrogen-fueled comedy show that was women 40 and over. Those might make a comeback. We might do that. I'm in contact with the person that I did comedy with, so we might revitalize those because I think they're important.
I hope so, because these all sound like things that I would actually like to see myself. But comedy doesn't just stop there, right? Like, using those skills has improved your life in other ways. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
100% it has. So as I said, I realized, didn't take me long to realize that I wasn't going to make a sustainable living at comedy, but there's a skill set that you draw from. And so in 2016, and I had been emceeing since, I started comedy. I was doing emceeing and a lot of speaking. But in 2016, I thought, how am I going to combine my love of a few different things? The nonprofit world, because that's where I came from. How am I going to combine my love of connecting with audiences through humor and make a living? And so I went to auctioneering school, which a lot of people don't know exists. It does exist. It was 8 days, 10 hours a day. It was no joke. And after that, in 2016, I became a licensed benefit or charity auctioneer. So I only work with nonprofits. I consult with them on how to set up their galas to be financially, efficient and meaningful and raise them all the money that they need. And the reason why I'm successful in that industry is because of comedy. I learned so much from doing comedy. I learned how to harness humor in a productive way that's helpful and not harmful. We've all been to comedy shows where we've seen it used, right? It's a tool, and how you wield it is up to you. So comedy has opened the door for so many things.
It's interesting because I think of my trajectory as a musician, and one of the things I think that made me a better musician and better on stage is that I had a background in teaching. I taught elementary school before going to law school. I've been a musician my entire life. Before I really hit the stage as a performer, I had already been a teacher. And those skills translated.
Yep.
Then I go to play music full time, and I find that the skills I picked up doing that when I went back to teaching actually helped me there too.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how all these skills from different parts of your life come together to make you who you are
Yeah.
in the aggregate.
Yeah.
Are there any other, because you talked about emceeing, you've talked about auctioneering. Have you seen any other benefits from all of those skills just in your life generally?
I think those skills just translate to how you engage with the world around you, right? I mean, everything's complicated now, and it takes some hardcore people skills to survive in the world today. So I do think that the skill set has allowed me to engage with people in a different way, in a way that I can break down barriers using appropriate humor. I can get people to open up, be more vulnerable when you use appropriate humor. So yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it. And let's be clear, the way that I got to reconnect with Wendy, who's now my wife, is because of comedy and humor and MC work, because dear Marsha asked me to MC an event. So I'll always be grateful for that.
Well, and let's talk about connecting and how comedy, and this is into the independent creator sphere in general. I'm going to give you a scenario,
Okay.
Debbie, that I'm going to bounce. I'm going to just give you the facts and you give me your gut, because
Okay.
it wouldn't be Break the Business if I didn't talk about Ryan Kaillalla's favorite topic, copyright law.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to move this out of the music sphere where it's actually happening right now. And we're going to just move it into comedy because I think for our purposes, they're analogous.
Okay.
There is a comedian and the comedian tells a joke. And because it's 2025 and you're supposed to keep your cell phones away at comedy clubs, but people don't, somebody records it.
Okay.
Somebody likes the joke, takes offense, whatever. They put up a YouTube video and they show the clip and they comment on the joke. The comedian does not like this
Okay.
and says, YouTube, that is a violation of copyright law. That is my material. They are using it. Take it down. And YouTube actually doesn't have an algorithm or somebody who actually checks these claims. They just automatically take it down.
Oh.
So the critic of the comedian loses their video.
Oh.
What do you think, Debbie? Does this sound fair? Does this sound like a world you want to live in? What's running through your head?
Oh, golly. Well, I have questions. You know, I have to ask questions to get to my answer. I mean, is the comedians, I don't know, obviously it's a made up comic, but their material, is it copyrighted? Can you even do that? I don't know. Their entire set, or is it open to be put out there publicly? Are they mad because they didn't post it and someone else did?
Maybe.
Do we not? This is a made up situation. I'm going to really stress out about this, just so you know.
Let's go to your first question. So under copyright law, anything that's fixed in a tangible medium is technically copyrighted. You have to register it with the federal government to get all your protections. But for the most part, if you write it down, if you record it, you have a copyright of some sort. You can't get the statutory damages until you register it. But in essence, let's assume it's copywritten. Let's also assume that they don't like the criticism.
Okay.
Right. Or maybe they do like the criticism, but just like you said, they also are like, no, this is mine and I want to be the only one sharing it.
Got it.
Does that change your... Oh, wait, I didn't answer your question. Let's do the first one first. Let's just say for our purposes, they don't like the criticism. Take it down. What do you think of that?
That's a hard sell for me to buy into that, because I feel like, right, all the world is a stage. I mean, so to speak, right? Everything feels so incredibly public now with cell phones. You know, that's why comedy clubs, you put them in a locked bag and you cannot take them out at all. But there's also, do you believe that all criticism is good criticism because it drives business to your page? I don't know. That could be too. And flip side, we live in a culture where people can get canceled very quickly. And I'm sure there's a genuine fear of that happening, right? Without knowing the material and what they said. So,
right. Well, it's, Lauren's popping in with her.
I know. Now I'm like, hold on. Cause this is like a thing, right? Because I know it's because I found my new wig today. And so now there's like a persona coming on, but we don't know what her name is yet. We'll know by the end of the show. No, but comedians and performers in general, comedians, I would say almost more so, feel a lot of ownership of their content, because that is a script they are writing, right? And now you're not just talking about their words being used by somebody else. You're talking about their actual performance being used by somebody else. And whether or not someone is profiting on it, I can very much understand someone wanting to have awareness and control of how their content is distributed. Right.
Sure.
So whether or not it's a bad comment or a good comment or social media, like there are a lot of content creators that say share, reproduce, make fan content. I love it. And there are some that say like, I would really like to keep my content in that bubble. I don't want it in the social sphere. And they should, in my opinion, have some kind of right to say, I don't want my content out there. And if you're putting out someone else's content, yeah, one of the consequences might be them saying, yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's fair.
Yeah. And this is why I bring it up, because what's going on YouTube now is exactly the discussion that we're having about comedy, but about music. And I would say maybe 2 years ago, Rick Beato, the famed, if you're not a musician, musicians know Rick Beato. He makes these great videos talking about the in-depths about songs and what makes a song great and how it works. And very frequently he gets his music or his videos pulled down from YouTube because the record companies say, no, you can't use our music, and they strike it. And he used to talk on his channel regularly about how he didn't like that and how he thought it was unfair. And hey, I'm driving people to your artist.
Yeah.
Like, what are you complaining? And this is, Debbie, where I'm willing to admit that I was wrong, because I stopped watching Rick Beato's videos because I got sick of hearing about it, because I was thinking of it as a fan, not necessarily as a lawyer.
Yeah.
I stopped practicing law 10 years ago. So that's not where I default. Then, and it breaks my heart. I know you know this YouTuber, the Professor of Rock. Yes, Debbie. The Professor of Rock had the same thing happen to him recently. And I love this dude. He makes hilarious rock like videos about like important music from the like 70s, 80s, 90s.
Oh, okay.
It's fantastic. He's just a dude who loves music.
Yeah.
And he was like, my music's getting struck down. By the way, on the screen grab that Lauren just put up in the top right corner, there's a Rick Beato video talking about the exact same thing.
Oh, that's funny.
And then as all this is happening, another content creator comes out, Fantano, who does criticism. He's a music critic. He's getting his stuff pulled down. And as this is shaping out, what we're learning is that record companies are pulling down music, are pulling down people's videos, particularly if they are critical of the music.
Oh.
And there have been some allegations floating around that they are trying to pay people to say positive things.
Oh, wow.
I know, disturbing, right? And then, Debbie, this is where I realized I had it wrong. Friend of the podcast, top music attorney, Miss Crystal. She posts the fair use requirements for copyright. And she says, hey, arguably, and I think she's correct, making these videos is criticism akin to news, and therefore fair use and should not be taken down.
Oh, okay.
And I got to thinking about, I'm going to use Dave Chappelle as an example. People have been very critical of Dave Chappelle in recent years for some of his jokes. And people will post his jokes and then criticize why they don't like it. That is, in my opinion, protected by fair use. Similarly, music critics or people who are making transformative works are probably protected. So, Debbie, do you think,
Oh, boy.
and again, no right or wrong answer.
There's always a right or wrong answer. I'm feeling a lot of pressure. I'm sweating. Okay, go ahead.
There is no right or wrong answer because law is complicated. I could even just be wrong. Ryan could come on next week and say Zach had it wrong. But my question is not, are these strikes legal or not? Is this good for the community to have music ripped down, have comedy ripped down without a review process? Or should there be a process in place to make sure that things are being taken down justly?
I would agree with the latter. And I also wonder if everything would change if the comedian was, if things were monetized. So if someone puts something up with your name attached to it, regardless of how it's being used, and you make money, does that change people's opinions? I don't know.
No, I come back. I know. And here's where the how the content was put out conversation, I think, comes back in.
Yeah.
Where I will say, if you put out a video and somebody puts a video side by side and is commenting on it, that is one thing. If I am a live performer and I understand that my audience can take it in real time, but I am not comfortable with recorded content being put out there, and you say, well, you did it live and I recorded it, so now I can make a parody of it. And that's not the same, because they never had the right to record the content in the first place. So just to say like, oh, you can make a parody of it. Well, you can only make a parody of it if you can use the content you're parodying. You can talk about it, but you can't record it and play it, you know?
Yeah.
And parody is an interesting thing, because I think, Lauren, you're talking about parody. There's actually a legal use of parody as well, right? Like Weird Al. Weird Al is a great example of parody. And his songs are protected by fair use. Weird Al actually doesn't have to pay royalties for the songs he writes because parody is protected. To Weird Al's credit, he does pay royalties.
And he gets permission, which is a big thing. Like, do you have to? No, but is it nice and kind and like, why not? I mean, unless you're trying to start a fight, we always say paperwork is supposed to stop the fights, not cause them, you know?
Yep. So this is what's going on in YouTube land right now. And I think it's worth keeping our eyes and ears on it, because this isn't just for musicians. This is, I think, comedians. This is something that's going to affect them. Are you a film creator? This is probably going to affect you. You don't want people having, like, if you get a review, you don't want people yanking it down, especially if your review is positive. Right. And also, if you're making movies, do you want to have the power to yank negative reviews down just because you don't like them? I don't know if that's good. But this is something to watch, and I would really encourage people who want to dig more into this, head over to Top Music Attorney on YouTube. She's doing a fantastic job covering this evolving scenario as it unfolds in real time, and she's wicked smart, so check her out.
I'm also going to do a bit of research for you, because there was somebody recently that I can't remember who it was, that was a stand-up comedian who actually was suing for her content, a joke that she had made that was getting reused. And I know that she did not win that case. So I'm gonna do a little background research and figure out some of the whys, because it's an interesting conversation. I like it.
And this is something that when Ryan comes back on the show, you can ambush him with. And here's what you do. Lauren, you just blame Debbie, because she won't be here.
Won't be here.
You know,
and we know he's not watching these shows or listening back while he's in China like that.
And me and my 29 YouTube subscribers, we're just happy living our best lives. So I feel pretty good that we're safe.
Dude, if you know every single one of them, you know more than most people's followers. So.
Well, family counts. It goes far. So it's
it does.
We can talk about paid YouTube subscribers all the time. I am more ready to check out accounts that have in the hundreds of subscriber versus the hundreds of thousands, because ever since I've learned about paid subscribers, it's really skewed.
Yeah.
But
agree.
Debbie, I want to just say I appreciate you as a guest. You have been thoughtful and insightful and very helpful.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, I just got to ask you one other question.
Sure.
What else are you doing? You mentioned earlier off air that you have an event you're working this weekend.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. So I'm going into fall fundraising season. So as an auctioneer and a fundraiser, we're really ramping up. And this Saturday, actually, I'm doing an event for Happy Dog Ranch. They are a horse rescue and sanctuary in Sedalia, Colorado, and an amazing organization, a wonderful cause. So I'll be over there raising money for them at the ranch.
Well, use those great skills to their benefit. And Debbie, thank you so much for coming on the show. Oh, you are amazing. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be talking to the CEO and co-founder of Song Tools, Danny Garcia. We're going to be back in 90 seconds. Take care.
Thanks.
Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com. 'Cause 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 'c
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show.
Thanks for coming back and listening on your medium of choice, whether you're streaming online with volume.com, via Sirius XM on Slam Radio, or your podcast provider of choice. Before we get to Danny Garcia, I sense that Lauren has information.
No real no update yet. I just
Okay.
didn't want to leave you sitting alone on screen. It felt a little too much weight on your shoulders there. So
I do have very puny shoulders. Well, let's get Danny on here so we can talk about song tools.
Hi, Danny. How are you doing?
How are you, Lauren and Zach? Thanks for having me on.
Dude, Danny, I have so many questions for you.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so first, but we're going to get to how Song Tools got to what it's doing. But first, can you give our listeners a short synopsis of what is Song Tools?
Yeah, of course. So Song Tools is essentially a music marketing platform. We built it to help indie music creators, as well as record labels, music publishers, etc. Anyone who really is releasing music today, to help them basically market their music, increase their fan bases, reach new audiences, all of the above. We really wanted to build out, the answer to the question of, which I'm sure a lot of people listening have had, where it's you've spent all the time kind of creating the song, thinking of an amazing track to make, going out, searching what's the best music distribution tool, finally getting it up there on YouTube and Spotify and Apple, and then it just sits there with 0 listens, right? So we were musicians ourselves. A lot of us here at Song Tools, including I've been playing guitar since I was in the 2nd grade, and definitely found myself in that position many times throughout my life in different bands, etc. And so, I studied music business at NYU and started working a lot in the promotion space, and learned that there's a huge opportunity to democratize the promotion space the same way the creation side has been democratized, as well as the distribution side, right? So we have that marketing toolkit to help artists with playlisting, with ads, and more.
So I think that's a great sort of intro. That's a primer, right? We've got, when we're talking about the democratization of, say, music being released with your distributors, you've got plenty of distributors you can use, right? But the idea of how to market it is not so readily available or understandable, I think, for a lot of people. But before I get to that, I have to ask this, because I was on the Song Tools website. How did you guys get from distributing and working with people from New York all the way down to Bogota, Colombia? Because this is fascinating to me.
Yeah. I mean, for starters, we're a pretty global company. We us here, I'm based in Miami, which I think maybe you guys are as well. But so I was in New York. Now I'm in Miami. Our other co-founder is in Miami, and we have another one in Spain. We have developers down in Colombia. So we've always been kind of all over the place in terms of the founders of the company. And I think that's led us to have a very global approach to the tools we build, because when we build a tool, we don't want it to just work with like English speaking commercial music, right? We've wanted to work with not only Spanish speaking reggaeton music. Now we work with companies like Mad Solutions in Africa, opening up like the Afro beats and dance hall genres. And, obviously like Southeast Asia comes into play as well. So we've always had that widespread global approach to the tools, which I think comes from playlisting in general is a very global thing. It's kind of like radio, where you can kind of tune in from wherever and listen from anywhere that Spotify is available. So as an artist, that kind of, lets you put your music in front of a pretty global audience. And so that's kind of how obviously it takes time, right? We started with the US first and really focused there, but then over time we expanded, and just naturally people found us, online and in other places.
Well, and also I'd like to talk about your partnership with Mad Solutions in Africa, because we've had, I've talked to lots of people. They're like, we specialize in India, we specialize in Southeast Asia, Japan. You're one of the first who I was like, ooh, when you start talking about partnering with Africa, that's a continent. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't take the credit for that one. I mean, that was a mix of my co-founder Gonzalo, who's our head of business development, and our other, advisor, Jimmy McCowie, who his background is actually really interesting because he ran Marathon Music Group in the UK, and they did a ton of work in the early days when Afro beats was like a proto genre, right? And they were signing artists in Nigeria and helping break them into the global stage. So he's always had that focus, right? Coming into, when we started working with him years later, and he had connections in that space, and we connected with Bugwu, the founder and CEO of Mad Solutions at actually the music biz conference in Atlanta now. And so, we kind of just hit it off. He was like, we're looking for an exact solution in this space. Luckily, we had the global kind of approach that I was just mentioning, and we kind of got to talking about it, and it just made sense, and we started working together through our partnership arm, and white labeling the tools. And I think for us, it's like you're saying, it's such an exciting focus, I guess, continent, but also specific regions, because that, like, the genres I've listed, like the Afro beats, the dance hall, like those kinds of genres are really, and piano as well, are starting to really pop. I mean, the click-through rates and the amount of placements and just the traffic that these artists are getting is pretty unparalleled, like across many genres, on platforms like Spotify, Instagram, etc. So we've seen stuff really take off. So it's just a really exciting and dynamic, focus area for us. And we're just excited about the amazing music coming out of there.
Well, and it's interesting to me to think about this type of expansion for an artist. So can we just do like a hypothetical, and you can sort of walk us through like what Song Tools would do for particular artists? Let's just say there's an artist, hypothetically, Zach Sloan. Let's just say that's their name. They come to you and they say, I have a record I'm putting out. I have a single. I want to work with Song Tools. What does Song Tools then bring to the table, and how do you collaborate with the artist to make sure that their music is being heard in Africa and Colombia and around the world?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have two main tools that we help artists with, and we've built out the platform kind of in a way that mirrors this thing we call like the funnel approach, which I think is an amazing thing to know, or a framework to know as an artist, whether you're going to work with us or not. I think this works really well in terms of marketing. And what you want to do in terms of building out a funnel with your music is you want to have a way to gain a lot of traffic for the song, right? So meaning, one way could be playlists, which we help with. Another way could be radio. Another way could be going out and just putting posters up with a QR code, like basically getting it in front of as many eyeballs, as many ears as possible. Then one step down the funnel, you're going further down to the funnel. You want to start engaging those people. That could be running advertisements. That could be collecting emails for an email list, asking them to follow you and engage with your Instagram. Different ways of actually engaging with those people to then, a percentage of those people that, found you on the playlist or listened to you on the radio would then engage. And then at the bottom of the funnel, you want to actually monetize those people. So you want to sell concert tickets, sell merch, etc., especially now in the streaming age when you're not making that much money off royalties. So it all becomes like a framework to eventually guide the people who are really interested and real fans down to driving revenue for you as the artist. So what we do at Song Tools particularly is we help with the top part of the funnel. And for us, that's playlisting. So we help you get in front of, a really large community of independent playlists. They're completely global. They're pre-vetted to make sure there's no bots or anything like that. And we just let them kind of interact with the songs that they like the most, hopefully getting you on playlists, exposing you to new audiences. That's kind of our answer to the top of the funnel. And then moving down to the middle of the funnel, we also help with ads on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook currently. And those we've basically automated the entire process. So if you're an artist, I mean, you have tried running meta ads in the past and failed, or you're doing it successfully and it takes a lot of time. What we do is all you need to feed us is a link for your song, and we build out the entire process. So we actually make the landing page, the pixel, all the boring stuff from the marketing perspective we use with data aggregation online. And then we launch out a campaign targeting new listeners in your genre that we think are really compatible with your music. And that way we're able to drive engagement for your track as well. So people that are going to follow you, save your track to their library, do things like that. And those are the two main ways we help, I think, with the entire funnel approach that we were just, discussing.
Well, and how does what challenges are you facing as you're expanding, say, an American artist into these diverse marketplaces, right? I mean, the infrastructure is different country to country. The culture is different. How do you adapt accordingly?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, when you get an artist that's trying to, I guess, export into a different country, or you could call it that. For us, the data is the most important thing. You have to optimize constantly. We do that across the playlisting campaigns, for example, where if you have an indie pop song, right, and we see a ton of pop curators interact with it and not a lot of indie curators interact with it, we're going to go after more pop, for the rest of the campaign. So that's a very, I would say, dumbed down version of what happens, but we like to optimize based off of the data that's coming in. And that is imperative, especially when you're trying out an artist in a new region or country. It's really paying attention to what's driving conversion and almost this A/B testing. We do that for you on an automated level, but I always tell artists do that for yourself as well. If you're out there playing a show and you're playing one song versus the other, make sure you're looking at the crowd's faces when you're playing each one of those tracks and taking note of which one people were really excited about and which one people were kind of scrolling on their phones alternatively, type of thing, right? And that's all data that you could save as an artist. And that's what we do on a basic level when you're going into a new audience, whether that be in a new country or just maybe a neighboring genre or things like that.
I started laughing. I did not laugh on Mike when you said watch the crowd, because
yeah.
my head, what I heard is the crowd will tell you what sucks, and so don't play what sucks. But I think there's some valuable wisdom in there, right? We're looking at what ultimately is going to work, or what we're trying to get to work. And one thing that I've come across in my time as an independent musician and working with lots of bands and artists is a lot of them come in very gung-ho and I'm going to do it all myself. And then 6 weeks into a campaign, they are so burnt out that they're no longer able to function and continue with their marketing plan. I mean, does something like Song Tools help artists deal with that burnout? Are you sharing the load in such a way that you guys are dealing with the nitty-gritty and the artists are being able to focus on their art?
1000%. Yeah, I would say that's one of the main benefits of using our tool across the board is the time saved aspect of it. You don't have to spend time submitting to each one of these playlists by hand. We're kind of just matching you with the ones and putting it in their feed automatically. And then on the ad side, it's even further than that. I mean, the amount of time you save, ask anyone that runs music ads. Even the top
it sucks. I've done it.
Exactly.
I hate it.
Yeah. It's just because meta ads is a very convoluted and in-depth tool that, we as in the music industry use maybe less than 5% of all the tools out there in that whole suite of tools, right? It's built out for huge companies to run huge campaigns. So we've kind of just basically whittled it down to look at what's actually driving the engagement on these platforms like Spotify and Apple. And then that's the main, I guess, default setting that we run with just to get you up and running quickly. So a big part of it is just that time saved aspect. And that's a huge thing, right? Like, because you look across the entire creation chain for an artist now, it's like that's happening across everything. It's like, before you would have to like record for hours. Now it's like takes a few takes and you have something that sounds amazing. You can download samples off Splice. You throw a compressor on there. It sounds like, what it would used to take months to get to. And similarly on the, distribution side, you don't have to print actual physical stuff anymore. You just upload it and it's there on stores available in less than a few weeks. Right. So we want to do that same thing, but for the marketing side, because we feel there's nothing out there that has simplified it enough.
Well, and it's interesting when I think about this landscape, right? I'm curious from your business perspective, right? Because I'm playing the role of the creative here. From your business perspective, I mean, how are these tools like reshaping the economics of being an independent artist?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, more and more we're seeing the focus, like economically, the focus is now, I think, more and more on this other concept we like to talk about called like fan lifetime value, where it's
explain.
I think it's like, I think historically it's there as well, but I guess the lifetime value of a fan has changed, where if you're not optimizing for revenue nowadays, it's really hard to make money because there's more and more, I think, things being sold to the artist. So like all the things I listed previously are all services that you have to buy or subscribe to, including ours, as an artist. So before you even get a fan, you're, I don't know, a few $1,000s in the hole or in the red, right? So that the upstart cost, even though it's much lower than it once was, there still is some. So and the revenue is much lower than what it was, and the competition is much higher. So economically, if you're not optimizing for revenue, right? So if you're not optimizing for the merch sales, the concert tickets, etc., or a crazy amount of streams, it's going to be really hard to be in the green, I think, is kind of how it shifted. I mean, if you think back previously to, how bands were releasing music back in the day, a lot of them had the advance. A lot of them had to spend a lot of money to record and press a bunch of, CDs or whatever. And then they would have to sell those CDs, but there was much less competition, limited space in the record stores or in the stores. So it's changed a lot in terms of like the democratization, in my opinion.
And Danny, you hurt me. You've just wounded me by talking about the record industry back in the day, because I remember very vividly pressing CDs and cassettes and vinyl. And vinyl's making is making more money than the other forms right now. But I think it's worth pointing out something. You were recently named to the Forbes' 30 under 30. How has that recognition impacted Song Tools or just your visibility in the industry generally?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, an amazing honor and recognition. I think it just helps a lot to validate everything we're working on, and also bring, I think, this marketing side and the whole like recorded music side into the forefront too, because a lot of the other people in that list come from, I think, other areas of the industry. So coming from this kind of like music tech digital space and being able to represent that space is awesome in, whatever conversations we can. And it's definitely helped a ton, in terms of like getting recognition and being able to talk to, other people in the industry about what we're working on and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was just a fascinating thing, because sometimes when I talk to people in the industry, they oftentimes refer to the industry as if it's still 1978. Yeah. And I'm like, guys, this ain't that. Things have changed. And completely. So I find having younger voices in the room is actually really helpful. I know that some of my older musician, old heads around me will bristle at this, but what you've described is a modern day marketing strategy. And one thing that I found interesting in looking at Song Tools is you all don't appear to be focused necessarily today. It looks like you guys are pretty looking towards the future already. Where do you see the trends in marketing going in the next 3 to 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question as well. For me and what I'm seeing across the board is, number one, focusing on engagement. I kind of touched upon this earlier, but I think the artists that have been getting amazing results right now are the ones that focus on any platform on the layer deeper. So what that means is, on Spotify, don't look at monthly listeners and streams, look at saves and followers. Same on YouTube, right? It's about likes and subscribers rather than, views. That's number one. And I think the art, just high level across the board, artists that do that and continue to do that, I think the algorithm thanks you over time. And that's like, I never recommend to try and game the algorithm, but that's kind of the best way to do it, is just focus on putting out amazing content and driving towards real engagement. I think on the secondary tier to that as well, where I'm really seeing, amazing results as well, and looking at the future, I think someone said this, a marketer said this, is like, creative is the new targeting, where we're moving ahead, like, yeah. So from a marketing perspective, and I didn't come up with that. Someone else came up with that. So can't take the credit, but I think it's an awesome term to describe what's happening on these social platforms, where everything is moving towards broad. So before, you used to go into Meta and go super targeted and get like really in depth. Now it's broad. You're just kind of shooting content out there. Even Meta is now doing AI targeting, and everything's going open. And what you focus on as the creator is making like amazing, optimized, less than 30-second, real style videos that target a very specific person. And then they're going to be able to find the right person to get it in front of across all the different platforms. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think the data that we look at really backs that up more and more every day.
Well, and one thing I want to emphasize, if I could underline this in, as what Danny said, is paying attention to saves and downloads, not just monthly listeners, paying attention to things other than your subscriber count, right? I don't even know how many YouTube channels I subscribe to, but I know the 10 that I watch religiously, right? And I think that's a really important point that you just made. So Danny, now I got to go back in time with you, because we've had a lot of talk about, sort of the nitty gritty of marketing, but you were a blogger and a musician before Song Tools. How did those early days in that part of the industry influence how you helped build Song Tools?
Yeah, I think I've always come at it from that perspective of that I was describing at the beginning, where you're the person putting yourself in the shoes, and I was there, of the person that just finished the track, worked on it in their garage, put it up with whatever DistroKid for $20, and then you're just sitting there like, what's next? So I've always thought about the industry from that perspective, because that's where I was, and a lot of people are there now. And at the time when I started thinking about this, like, blogging was the thing, right? Like you wanted to get on a blog. Like Pitchfork was the biggest and best thing, Submit Hub back in the day too. Like it's still obviously around, but like back then it was like the biggest thing ever.
It was the thing. Yeah. And you were getting on blogs, and it was the whole thing. So that's kind of, I knew I wanted to be within what was working and what was trending. And so I started there, then like dabbled into like SoundCloud and SoundCloud trading. And then later, as Spotify playlists became prominent, started doing that. And so I think it's with marketing in particular, you have to be like pretty, I think, nimble, right? Because trends change, platforms change. So just staying on top of what exactly is happening. And then for us and for me, the big thing was like building on any of these platforms. You just want to have a few pillars. Number one, affordable. Number two, effective. And number three, like automated. So like simple, like easy to use. And so that's kind of the ethos that we take into any of those tools we build, is like, all right, we're going to make a meta ads tool. Let's make sure people can afford it. So it's not like costing them an arm and a leg, like working with an agency. Let's make sure it actually works and drives real engagement. And then let's make sure it's really just simple and easy to use, and actually
provides some time saved. And so that's kind of how we approach all of those different things, starting with the blogging back in the day.
That's really an interesting way to kind of think about this, right? All right, we're running short on time, but I gotta, anytime I get to talk to another musician, I always have to ask them, like, what is something you're listening to now that we should all check out?
Oh man, good question. I have Spotify open here, so I've been listening to like too much Steely Dan. So if you haven't listened to, I guess, The Royal Scam,
Yeah,
it's an amazing album.
Steely Dan. By the way, for the uninitiated, the first time you listen to it, it may not make sense. Listen to it again, and it's fantastic. Like it's really,
It definitely, like you're saying, takes a few listens, but once you do, I mean, they were like my number one Spotify most listened last year, and I think they're there this year. So, it's amazing music. It will, really, you'll listen to a new thing every time you listen to it. It's that kind of music.
oh, for sure. Yeah, it's fun. I think one of the things that I'm always amazed at with Steely Dan is the way that, like, and I forget their guitar player's name, but I'm a guitar player myself, and the way they layer the harmonies,
Walter Becker.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like you listen to those chord structures and you're like, oh my goodness, this is like Bach level, like voice leading, and this is incredible. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and the session musicians they had on all those records, or I mean, on that record, the Royal Scam, they had Bernard Purdy on the drums, who I'm a huge fan of.
wow.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why that record is so amazing. It's the drumming on it is next level. So if you're into that type of stuff, definitely check it out.
Oh, that's a great recommendation. Our guest today has been Danny Garcia, co-founder, CEO of Song Tools. But before I let you go, Danny, I have to ask our last question. Do you have any final tips for independent creators to help them move their careers forward?
I think we covered a lot of them, today, like throughout the discussion. But I think one of the ones that we didn't cover enough was the rate at which to release today. I think that's a really important tip that, again, I've seen, because we look at a ton of artists coming through the system and we have a lot of data on them. So we see what's working, what's not. And that's kind of what we nerd out on. And the ones that do really well today, like pending some, really lucky, like people that just like really pop on a certain platform like TikTok or anything, but the ones that are able to build really sustainable kind of careers are the ones that are releasing very, very frequently. And I know that's a kind of a hot topic because people, artists like don't want that much pressure and they want to release on their schedule. But like, if you're optimizing for like that growth, the ones that are releasing and building catalog and really like frequently releasing are the ones that I've seen do really well. So, maybe think about that. Maybe try the waterfall strategy, which you can like look up and Google how to use that. But I think that's one of the other tips that I always like to call out.
Man, thank you so much. Once again, that's Danny Garcia, CEO and co-founder of Song Tools. Danny, thank you so much for being on our show this week. Everybody out there, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and keep creating. Talk to you later.